From our Toronto studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Zahra Sayed. Our top story tonight. Israeli forces have killed at least 104 Palestinians and wounded 160 others in 10 massacres in the past 24 hours, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. This brings the Palestinian death toll since October 7th to over 29,614, with over 69,616 wounded and 8,000 missing, believed to be dead or buried under the rubble. Homes in the center of Gaza were Israel's main target, where at least 40 people were killed. In Rafah, 8 more people died as they were fleeing. Israeli forces claim to have carried out precise operations, including at Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis. However, witnesses told the media that the areas surrounding the hospital and various buildings within it were heavily damaged. The Ministry of Health reports that Israeli forces re-entered the besieged Nasser Hospital after briefly withdrawing from it. The Israeli military says it has taken out more than 10 Hamas fighters in the ongoing operations. Meanwhile, 2 10-year-old Palestinian children were arrested by Israeli forces for allegedly throwing stones in the West Bank and released after 6 hours. In Lebanon, an Israeli airstrike on a health center in Bint Jabal killed 2 paramedics and destroyed civil defense facilities. The Israeli war against Gaza has resulted in 85% of the area's population being displaced due to acute food shortages within the country. Israel has been accused of genocide before the International Criminal Court. In an interim ruling in January, Tel Aviv was ordered to stop its genocidal actions and take measures to ensure humanitarian supplies for the civilian population in Gaza. The Israeli army has destroyed a mosque in southern Gaza City. Footage shows the extent of the destruction, with wreckage of collapsed buildings and the Al Farouk Mosque in the city of Rafah. Footage shows the extent of destruction with wreckage of collapsed buildings and the Al Farouk Mosque in the city of Rafah. Israel has killed close to 30,000 Palestinians in Gaza since an October 7th Hamas attack that Tel Aviv says killed nearly 1,200 people. The Israeli war on Gaza has pushed 85% of the territory's population into internal displacement amid acute shortages of food, clean water, and medicine. Approximately 60% of its infrastructure has been damaged or destroyed, according to the UN. For the first time since its creation in 1948, Israel stands accused of genocide at the International Court of Justice, the highest judicial body of the United Nations. An interim ruling in January ordered Tel Aviv to stop genocidal acts and take measures to guarantee that humanitarian assistance is provided to civilians in Gaza. Israeli Minister of Settlement and National Missions Orit Struk has denied the existence of the Palestinian people. Taking to the social media platform X, he said there is no such thing as a Palestinian people. He also opposed the setting up of a Palestinian state. The far-right Israeli minister, who lives in an illegal settlement in the occupied West Bank, claimed that a Palestinian state would be an existential threat to Israel and the peace and order of the whole world. On Wednesday, the Knesset voted unanimously in support of a government decision to reject unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state. Israel occupied East Jerusalem during the 1967 Arab-Israeli War. It annexed the entire city in 1980, claiming all of Jerusalem as its eternal and undivided capital, in a move never recognized by the international community. The Palestinians hope to establish an independent state of their own in Gaza and the West Bank, with Jerusalem as its capital. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has revealed a post-war strategy for Gaza to the Security Cabinet, the Times of Israel reports. Key points of the plan include continuing military operations until goals like dismantling terrorist infrastructure and securing the release of prisoners are achieved. Governance of Gaza post-war will be overseen by local officials not tied to Hamas-supporting entities, with a focus on de-radicalization efforts involving Arab nations. The plan emphasizes Gaza's demilitarization before reconstruction can begin, with Israel retaining the right to intervene to prevent the resurgence of Hamas. Security measures include maintaining a buffer zone and cooperation with Egypt for border control. It will also allow Israel to assert security control over the West Bank and close the UN Relief Agency for Palestinian refugees. The Palestinian presidency has rejected Netanyahu's plan, citing continued Israeli occupation and hindrance to Palestinian statehood. Nabil Abu Rudina, the official spokesman for the presidency, says Gaza will only be part of the independent Palestinian state with Jerusalem as its capital. He adds that any plans other than that are doomed to failure. Meanwhile, a Hamas delegation discussed a ceasefire with Israeli and Egyptian officials in Cairo, addressing prisoner release and humanitarian aid amid tensions at Al-Aqsa Mosque. The White House coordinator for the Middle East and North Africa was also in Egypt this week for talks. The International Court of Justice, or the ICJ in The Hague, continued hearing arguments on Israel's occupation of Palestinian territories. 12 countries presented arguments on Friday. Pakistan's Minister for Law and Justice, Ahmad Irfan Aslam, emphasized that while Israel aims to solidify its occupation, history proves reversibility is possible. Aslam stressed the need for a two-state solution, citing precedents like France's withdrawal from Algeria in 1962. Representatives from Oman, Abdullah bin Salim bin Hamad al-Houthi, condemned Israel's actions, highlighting the transfer of settlers and forcible displacement of Palestinians as violations of international law. Norway reiterated the obstacles posed by Israeli settlements to lasting peace, referencing ICJ's previous findings on the illegality of construction in the occupied territories. Namibia's Justice Minister Von Dossib demanded the ICJ recognizes Israel's occupation as illegal, drawing parallels between the Palestinian struggle and Namibia's own history of unlawful occupation. Dossib urged the court not to ignore the atrocities faced by Palestinians, emphasizing the moral duty to address the issue. The hearings continue to shape the international discourse on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, with implications for future negotiations and compliance with international law. The hearings will continue until Monday. 52 countries are presenting evidence in The Hague regarding the legal ramifications of Israel's long-standing occupation of Palestinian territories. This coincides with separate International Court of Justice hearings initiated by South Africa, alleging that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. In an interim ruling in January, Tel Aviv was ordered to stop its genocidal actions and take measures to ensure humanitarian supplies for the civilian population in Gaza. Canadian Muslims bar parliament members from entering mosques over genocide. Details come after the break. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Canadian Muslim organizations have declared that federal ministers are unwelcome in mosques. That is, unless they denounce reported Israeli war crimes, a call for a Gaza ceasefire, and to reinstate United Nations aid for Palestinians. The National Council of Canadian Muslims, or NCCM, spearheaded the stance in an open letter. Failure to comply means MPs would not have a platform during Ramadan. NCCM is also demanding a halt to arms to Israel and defense of Canadians supporting Palestinians. Funding cuts to United Nations Relief Agency, or the UNRWA, are described as unjust and lifeline-threatening to Palestinian refugees. The looming offensive on Rafah adds to the urgency. Israel faces accusations of genocide at the International Court of Justice, with an interim court ruling in January demanding humanitarian aid access to the people of Gaza. Over 180 Catholic and evangelical associations in Spain protested against Israel's ongoing attacks in Gaza in the capital, Madrid. Representatives of the associations gathered in front of the Israeli embassy and called for the stopping of the genocide in the name of humanity. Catholic clergyman Nikes Theron emphasized the demand for peace based on justice and reconciliation, expressing solidarity with the Palestinian people. Protester Margarita Jimenez denounced the killing of civilians, particularly children and women, and criticized international inaction, questioning how such atrocities can be tolerated. She also criticized the U.S. for its continued support of Israel and the European Union for its silence, expressing disbelief at the lack of meaningful intervention. The U.S. has shot down 6 Houthi drones in the Red Sea, which it said posed as an imminent threat. According to U.S. Central Command, an American aircraft and a coalition warship shot down 6 unmanned aerial vehicles belonging to the Iranian-backed Houthis operating in Yemen. Hours later, the Houthis fired 2 anti-ship ballistic missiles from southern Yemen into the Gulf of Aden. The missiles hit a British-owned freighter, causing 1 minor casualty and damage. The Houthis have targeted cargo ships in the Red Sea, owned or operated by Israeli companies, or transporting goods to and from Israel. This is to show solidarity with Gaza, which Israel has been waging war on since October 7th. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA, has warned consumers of the risks related to using smartwatches or smart rings that measure blood glucose levels without piercing the skin. The FDA said it has not authorized, cleared, nor approved any smartwatch or smart ring that is intended to measure or estimate blood glucose values on its own. Sellers of these products claim their devices measure blood glucose levels without requiring people to prick their finger or pierce the skin. But the FDA said in a statement that these devices are different from smartwatch applications that display data from FDA-authorized blood glucose measuring devices that do pierce the skin. President Joe Biden has announced the cancellation of $1.2 billion in student loans for approximately 153,000 people. This applies to those who borrowed $12,000 or less and have been repaying loans for at least 10 years. The initiative aims to expedite loan forgiveness and provide relief, especially to those attended community college, as well as borrowers with smaller debts. It is part of a new repayment plan that has been applauded by progressive voters but opposed by Republicans. With more than 7.5 million enrolled in the program, Biden administration has now canceled a total of $138 billion in student debt. This is through executive actions bringing relief to more than 3 million people. Kyrgyzstan has repatriated 99 displaced women and children from Syria's Al-Hol and Al-Roj camps. These camps in northern Syria, which are managed by the US-backed Kurdish army groups YPG and PKK, accommodate families of ISIS terrorists. US Central Command says that so far, 4,500 people have been returned to their communities and countries from the camps in northeastern Syria. Approximately 30,000 individuals from more than 60 countries outside Syria remain in the Al-Hol and Roj camps, most of whom are children under the age of 12. According to State Department spokesman Matthew Miller, the U.S. stands ready to assist countries in their efforts to repatriate their nationals. The UN and the non-governmental organizations have voiced concerns about the humanitarian conditions in the two camps. A mosque in the Swedish capital, Stockholm, continues to endure Islamophobic assaults. The latest incident was reported on Wednesday. It involves threatening graffiti featuring a swastika and the message, "Kill Muslims." This marks the second attack this week on the Stockholm Mosque in the Södermalm district, involving a year-long pattern of hate crimes against Muslims. Previous incidents include graffiti scrawled with "Go Home" and a swastika on the mosque's door. Mosque committee member Muhammad Amin has expressed concerns about the escalating threats, suggesting protective measures like window bars. The mosque has also suffered window pane damage and previously received a suspicious letter and a fake bomb. The Islamic Association of Stockholm emphasizes the need for authorities to address these attacks promptly. It is urging prioritization of the safety of the Swedish Muslims and mosques to combat rising anti-Muslim racism. In a bid to secure seats in Pakistan's hung parliament, independent candidates supported by jailed former Prime Minister Imran Khan have united with a lesser-known party. This move comes after the recent elections resulted in a deadlock. Nearly 100 newly elected National Assembly members and about 200 from provincial assemblies have merged with the Sunni Ittihad Council to access reserved seats for women and minorities. Despite winning the most seats, Khan's candidates could not form a coalition for a majority. Meanwhile, the Pakistan Muslim League, led by former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif and Pakistan People's Party, have agreed on a power-sharing deal. Allegations of election rigging persist, with candidates claiming their mandate was stolen. The Election Commission faces around 300 challenges to the results amid revelations of result tampering by an official in the city of Rawalpindi. Last week, a top administrator there, Liaquat Ali Chattah, publicly admitted to changing all the results against the independent candidates in his city. Pakistanis casted their ballots on February 8th to choose representatives of the National Assembly and provincial assemblies. That's all from our Toronto studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon for the latest updates. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.